I'm Lee and this is my podcast about my handmade life. I'm on Instagram as Louleigh_ and on Ravelry as Louleigh, and I have a shop where I sell DPN cases this week are coming, notions cases and interchangeable knitting needle cases on Etsy at Shop Louleigh, and you can find links to all of my online places at louleigh.com. Thank you so much for joining me. After last week's sock extravaganza, I think this week's podcast is going to be a little bit shorter. It was really fun to see all of your comments in the thread for last week's episode. I was interested in the books that you had to share. Some people were talking about the shape of their feet relative to the style of sock that they like to knit. A lot of you like the fish lips kiss heel, which I thought was really interesting. I feel like there's a bit of research that could be done there in terms of actual foot shape and people's preferences in terms of sock fit. But anyway, it was just wonderful to hear about all of that, and I have drawn for the Pebbles and Pathways pattern, which is by Hay Brown Berry, and that was won by Rose Cottage 2. So I have got in touch with Mars and I'm sure she'll give that to you shortly. Yeah, that was really good fun. Shop news this week. There'll be an update this weekend. If you want to hear about that, then please subscribe to the newsletter. And there are DPN cases coming, and I will also have all of the Knit Pro Zing DPNs that I have in stock on special. I've decided not to stock those anymore, and so they have been reduced to clear, or they will be reduced to clear this weekend. Actually, I have a couple of sets there as well that range from 2mm right up to 3mm. So there's 5 sets of DPN Knit Pro Zing needles, 15cm long. So yeah, but if you're on the newsletter, you'll get more details about that probably later today actually. Today I'm wearing my Hero jersey. And this is something that I knitted a few years ago now out of Louleigh's DK, which is a superwash yarn. Come on. My little friend is joining me. Which is a superwash yarn. I think it's a merino and it's quite finely plied. I'm telling you all this because what I meant to say is that I don't actually wear this very much. I feel like the fabric is quite dense, and so the warmth it creates quite a close warmth, whereas when I'm wearing my Louleigh jerseys, they're warm, but there's a kind of a circulation because they're not as tightly spun and as tightly plied. So I think they hold a lot of warmth next to your body, but it feels like the air can circulate as well. Whereas with this jersey, unless it's really cold, it's a bit sweaty. I probably also knitted the yarn at a slightly tighter gauge than maybe I should have. I think the other reason that I don't wear it a lot is because I'm tending towards lighter colours in my wardrobe. I just feel like, while this is very dramatic, I feel like the lighter colours are just softer and a little bit prettier. So there's an aesthetic thing there as well. However, it's -2 degrees here today. That's Celsius. This is the weather report. It's -2 degrees here today. It's icy outside and cold, and so this is just perfect. This is community news, and there's a couple of things that I want to talk about in community news today. I had a question a couple of weeks ago from somebody, and I'm so sorry, I've forgotten your name. I meant to make a note of it and I totally didn't. I had a question asking me what I actually mean by a handmade life, and I'm quite a literal person, so when I say that this is my podcast about my handmade life, I literally mean that this is a podcast about the elements of my life that are actually handmade. I don't talk about gardening, I don't talk about stuff that I buy that much. I talk about things that I make. It's not that I want to have a life that's completely handmade or anything like that, it's just that I am a compulsive maker and I want to talk about it. We've also been talking about habits that go with our knitting and our knitting rituals, the things that we like to do while we're knitting, you know, and just the places that we knit and all of the sort of ritual that goes with our knitting and maybe our making as well. And so there's a new thread over in the group at the moment, specifically around knitting rituals, whether they're for mental health or for other reasons, or like me, it's just stuff that you do. So as I say, there's a thread over in the Ravelry group. Come and share your knitting zone. I realised after this question was kind of posed that I have a very specific setup in my knitting zone, and yeah, that probably tells you a little bit about me, and it would be fun to hear about your knitting habits. How does it fit into your day? So if you want to pop over to the Ravelry thread and share your knitting zone, or just tell us about something that you do specifically for knitting, then please come and join us. Or even if you have other makerly habits, I'm sure I have a number of things that I do when I'm sewing as well that are completely unconscious, or some of them might be conscious. There's a lot of stuff I do when I'm sewing because of the outcome that it has. So yeah, if you have other makerly habits, I'd love to hear about those too. I've stopped scratching, which is why this fellow is moving around and going hi hi hi. And he's now sat right in front of my show notes. So what was I going to talk about next? 1,000 grams. Actually, I'm going to put you down because I'm going to show you guys something that says that. We have Knit 1000 grams running in the Louleigh Ravelry group, and this is a challenge that we started back in September to knit a kilo of stash yarn before the Edinburgh Yarn Festival, or more generally before all of those lovely woolly festivals tend to start for the year. I suppose for me the first one in my year is the Edinburgh Yarn Festival, so I've set this up for my own purposes. I am currently at 980 grams, so I just have 20 more grams to go before I get to my 1,000 gram kilo challenge. I've knitted 3,237 meters. I decided to measure meters this year because I was looking at everybody else's totals, and some people have knitted multiple kilos of yarn, and I shouldn't compare myself to anybody else, but I was. So I decided to keep further data about my 1,000 grams just to make myself feel better. So the last thing that I have finished for Knit 1000 grams is my Furrow hat. This is a pattern by Jared Flood, and I knit this over the Christmas period out of, oh, I've forgotten the yarn. I probably wrote it down a few weeks ago. I think it's Dererum Natura in the, I'm not sure how this is pronounced. It might be Juliette or something like that. It's a French yarn, and it is a merino yarn, but it's a lot woollier than other merino yarns I have experience with, and it's a worsted weight, and I was specifically trying it out to see how it worked as a substitute for shelter and Brooklyn tweed yarns and Brooklyn tweed patterns. I had a really bad cold over Christmas, and so I made a lot of mistakes with this. The cable is not as it's written in the pattern. I think I missed out a row in that, but I still think it looks okay. I had to drop back, I think it was about 6 rows in the crown shaping because I had made a mistake, and I fixed it, and there was a lot of loosey-goosey yarn in the crown there, but I have actually been wearing this quite a bit and it just seems to have eased back in of its own accord. The other thing was that I didn't swatch for this hat. I know, I'm a bad knitter. So what I did instead was to knit the brim, and I knit the brim, I think it was about three times, until I got a band that actually fitted really neatly around my head. And I'm really pleased with the fit of this. So I have no idea if I actually got gauge. Let's hunker down, there we go. This is how it looks on. Yeah, I have no idea if I got gauge. I just used the band to work out the fit of the hat, but I am really pleased with do that thing, you look in your viewfinder to straighten your hair out. I am really pleased with the fabric and the way that it feels. I have made a pom-pom, and there's a picture on Instagram and on Ravelry of the pom-pom actually attached to the hat. I made it out of Icelandic Louleigh, which I think makes a lovely fluffy pom-pom, and I think it looks really good when it's attached to the hat. However, I've discovered that I'm only a pom-pom person when it's actually really cold. So when it's a little bit warmer, I feel like a pom-pom is a little bit overkill. And now that it's actually icy outside, I think I'll probably reattach it to the hat. I didn't use the button method because I've tried that before and the pom-pom didn't feel like it was really firmly affixed to the hat. I don't want to lose my nice white pom-pom. So all I've done is to use some superwash yarn with nylon in it in a visible colour, and I can thread this through the top of the hat quite easily, almost without a needle, and then just tie it on with a bow, and that seems to firmly affix my pom-pom to the top of the hat. So yeah, I'm really pleased with this. I tend to be someone who prefers a 4-ply hat just because you can take it on and off and pop it into your pocket quite easily. So this is definitely sort of a cooler weather hat for me, and it's probably not one that I would travel with that much, just because it's bulky when you put it into your handbag. This week I've pretty much only been working on one project, and that is Burton, which is my vintage focus project for January. And so my aim with my vintage project for each month is just to get it to the point where I know what's happening with it and I can just pick it up and carry on. So I knitted the sleeve on Burton and it didn't actually fit very well. It was way too tight. The torso was looking really good, but the sleeve was just really, really tight, and so I undid it. So I've washed the yarn and I'm going to wind that back up into balls so that I can use it again. And I started re-knitting the sleeve here. So this is a steet cardigan. It's a Norwegian design and it's from Koftebukken, which is in Norwegian, but Google Translate recently has become really good at, I was about to say diagnosing, what I mean is translating Norwegian knitting patterns. So I've been able to make out what it says in quite a lot of detail. So yeah, I've started knitting the sleeve again, and I am doing it on DPNs. I had done the first sleeve on magic loop, and I was finding that my gauge on the sleeve was quite different from my gauge on the body of the cardigan. So some people suggested that I knit inside out, and that might help me carry my floats a little more evenly. And at that point I had already ordered the DPNs to use on the sleeve, and my logic there is that when you knit on an interchangeable needle and the stitches are on the cable, they tend to bunch up and to sit together, whereas you can see here that on the DPNs they're kind of being held open and apart by themselves. So I thought that might help me with my gauge a bit. When I first picked up for the sleeve and started it again, I tried knitting with DPNs and inside out, and I was feeling very fingers and thumbs with my colour work technique for some reason. And of course there's a lot of pointy ends when you have 5 long DPNs, and it was not fun at all. I think also that over 2018 I knitted my sleeves separately, and I've actually been finding knitting something with the whole torso, a sleeve with the torso attached, really cumbersome. If there was a greater gap here with just a plain colour, then I would very definitely knit the sleeve separately and graft it on afterwards, because yeah, knitting sleeves attached to the torso is just a little more cumbersome than knitting them separately. It's so much easier to knit them separately, I think. They become a take-along project rather than this massive thing. Anyway, so I kind of worked out that I didn't need to knit with the DPNs and knit the sleeve inside out. I didn't need to do both. As I've knitted down this, I have been changing the places where my DPNs intersect, because you can probably see there that my colour work is quite lumpy and bumpy and uneven. Less so than it was on the first version. And I've washed the yoke already, which is why that's beautiful and flat. I haven't washed the torso yet, and I suspect that this has actually flattened and evened out whilst it's been in the bag for a year. This, as I say, this is quite lumpy and bumpy here, and I'm a little bit concerned that it won't even out. So I'm going to knit the sleeve and then wash the whole thing, just to make sure that I'm happy with the finish on the sleeve. I've changed the shaping on the sleeve as well, just to make sure that it's not tight. I don't want it to be tight on my arms. I don't want the thing that I wear underneath to ride up into my armpit in an uncomfortable way. So I've started the shaping further down the sleeve, and that seems to be working out quite well. So as I say, I'm going to knit to the end of this sleeve and then give it a wee swim and see how I get on. So it's really exciting to actually have that back out. These little squares are a little bit like self-striping yarn in that you just want to knit the next row of little squares. And of course it's a much shorter circumference here, so it feels like I'm getting along at a great rate. And because it's such a regular pattern, it's just really easy to do. So I am enjoying this again, and I am really glad to have it back out, and I'm really grateful to a very specific one of you that kept asking me about it, because I think it's going to be fun to have this finished and wearable. So that is my handmade life for this week. It's so nice to come and have a chat with you all and to have heard about all of your sock knitting preferences. Thank you so much for joining me. If you enjoyed yourself, please come over and join us in the Ravelry group, and you can like and subscribe below, and I will see you next time. Cheerio!